Hi everybody, welcome back to Teal Talks. Holly and I are coming to you together today with my little moose friend. We're in my office, which looks like it's a jungle. We're just getting a whole lot of different vibes here today, but we wanted to make this fun, which is ironic because we're doing a music mini today, and the songs are not. The content is not necessarily like as fun as the backdrop is. So hopefully the fun backdrop will account for the theme of our music minis.
Yes.
But today we're going to be doing the music minis, series within the series that we've been doing, and we're going to focus on 4 different topics. So Holly, do you want to start us off, and then I'll go after you?
Sure, and just to kind of add to what Chris is saying, so I wanted to mention this is going to be our last music mini. So we wanted to do something different than what we've been doing with our very long music mini series, even though it was only like maybe 4 videos. So instead of having the whole video be one topic, we're going to do 4 different songs that are each a different topic, and they're each a different feeling. We had a couple different topics we wanted to make sure we hit on, and in fact I think there was quite a few more topics we wish we could have hit on, but because we're making this our last music mini, we wanted to make sure we got in a couple things, so that's what we're going to do. And I guess I'll just give a little brief introduction to the 4 topics that we're going to hit on today, and it's sadness, anger, grief/loss, and sexual assault or sexual assault specific songs. So to start our songs and our music minis today, we wanted to start with the song that we chose that represents sadness or the feeling of sadness. So as Chris said, I'll start. And so the song that I chose, and we both have a piece of paper with our topics on in front of us, so that's what I'm like throwing around here. But the song that I chose for sadness was a little bit different. I think that a lot of us, when we think about sadness, have a particular song that comes to mind. For me, I think I have a playlist of songs that I could have chose from, but I tried to do something a little bit different. Recently I listened to an album that I used to listen to when I was really young, and I remembered this one song that I used to really like, and it's by Katy Perry, and the song is called Lost, and this is on her One of the Boys album, so it was her very first album. That album is a little bit different. The music on it is a little bit different. I had said to Chris, it's a very kind of like niche music. It's a very niche song. And what I mean by that is when you listen to it, it sometimes is weird to some people, but I really liked the theme of the song because I think that Katy really can represent depression and how that feels to some people, especially in a particular time in your life. So in the song, Katy talks about how she's feeling really lost, that's the name of the song, and how she essentially has kind of started a new time in her life and she's in this new place, and how like maybe good things are happening and she has new friends, but things just don't feel right and she doesn't know where to go, even though she knows her goals, and nothing's really feeling right, and because of that she feels lost and she feels stuck. That's kind of like the overall theme of the song, is like, even if you know where you want to go, I don't know how to get there, and I just feel lost, and I feel like I'm on the path and I just don't know how to find the path, and I'm just really, really lost. And I think it's a really good song. I chose that for sadness because it's a little bit different. It's not our typical like I'm crying and I'm feeling sad, but it's that I think sometimes when we feel depression, we can feel that lack of motivation or that feeling of stuck and not knowing how to figure out how to get unstuck. And so I liked how Katy kind of describes it in the song.
I don't know if I should look at you in the camera or look at you in person. It's very weird because we're so used to doing this via Zoom and not together. So now I'm just like staring at you talking in the camera instead of looking at you actually talking. This is just evidence that quarantine has significantly impacted social skills and the way we interact with people. So my choice for sadness was Poor Me by Hollywood Undead, and it's spelled P-O-U-R me, not P-O-O-R. Which I wanted to clarify just in case anybody goes to look it up and they can't find the song. So Poor Me is a song about feeling kind of similar to what Holly talked about, feeling a little bit lost. The person in the song is struggling with finding healthy coping mechanisms to deal with the sadness that they're feeling. A heads up to anyone who does look at this song, there is one curse word in it, so this is the warning that it is explicit. You might be able to find like a clean version. It is just one at one point during the song that they do curse. But throughout the song, they kind of talk about struggling with self-esteem. They talk about just feeling really sad and really defeated, kind of like at the the end of the road per se. At one point, I really like this reference that they make to the child within them. So they talk about that they remember what it was like to be a child and the feelings of being a child and feeling like they really could get back to that or connect with that. They just don't know how to. The other thing I really like about it is the emphasis on resiliency. So throughout the song, kind of like right before the chorus and at the very end, they talk about that they can even get to a better place if they try. If they put that energy in and they do it, it might take a lot of work and it might feel very daunting, but they can get there. So kind of like what Holly talked about, I think there's a little bit of this like resiliency, this light at the end of the tunnel per se, that is brought about in the song. So that was my choice for Sadness, and I'll pass it back to you, Paul.
So for our second song choice, as we had talked about, or I had mentioned, is going to be about anger. So I'll tell you, I had a little bit of a hard time picking my anger song. A lot of the songs that I had in mind, I thought maybe weren't the best examples that I wanted to choose, or I just had a hard time representing what I really wanted to do. But what I ended up choosing was a song called Gaslighters by the Chicks, previously known as the Dixie Chicks. But this song, I'm actually not going to describe it too much because I think that the title really describes the song. The song is describing kind of an ex, a partner, or a person in their life that is a gaslighter. And I think gaslighting is something that we talk a lot about in counseling when we're talking about healthy and unhealthy qualities in relationships or in people. And that is something that's really important to be able to recognize because it is something that people should not be doing. Obviously, gaslighting. it's an abusive tactic. And so I think the song itself is angry, but obviously I think it's a very valid feeling if someone is being abusive or really unhealthy. You have every right to feel angry, and I think that they describe their feelings really well in that song too.
I didn't know the Dixie Chicks changed their name to the Chicks.
The Chicks.
Like strictly the Chicks. A fun fact, my first concert was the Dixie Chicks.
Oh.
I've never publicly admitted that, but here we are.
Interesting facts for everyone.
Not my style of music either, so maybe that was like a free concert or one I just got taken to along with somebody. I don't know, but that's neither here nor there. So my song for anger, unlike Holly, I had a hard time with this because I had such an extensive list that I couldn't find one to choose from and choose one that I thought would be appropriate for this setting. So the song that I did wind up going with is called Show 'Em the Ropes by A Day to Remember, and this song kind of has a little bit of like revenge-ish sound to it, but basically it's talking about someone who was betrayed by somebody very close to them. So at one point they say something like, never trust anybody to the point where your back is exposed. So obviously there's that theme of betrayal, and then the way that they're expressing it is through anger. So throughout the song they kind of talk about this person's downfall, and their anger is manifested in this way of like, you know, I'm not going to do it, but kind of the theme of karma, like things will come back around to you and I can't wait for that to happen. Like I can't wait to watch that happen. I'm not going to help you when it happens. So it is a very angry song, and that theme is very consistent throughout all of it. Is it the healthiest expression of anger? Maybe not, but I think it has that vibe to it that like, you've really hurt me, and because of that I kind of want the same for you, but I don't want to do it myself. So I think it gives kind of an interesting spin to that. So what was our next topic? Grief and loss?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So moving on to grief and loss. So for my grief and loss song, I chose a song that I wanted to kind of be able to lead into our last topic as well. But the song that I chose for grief and loss is Hurt by Christina Aguilera. And for those who don't know, I think this is an amazing song. It can be really hard to listen to, but also for those who don't know Christina's backstory, her and her mom had experienced abuse from her father, and they ended up leaving her father and kind of escaping the abuse. And so when Christina was an adult and she had gained her fame, her father attempted to get in contact with her a few times, and she had refused to get in contact with him, and he ended up passing away. And so in this song, Christina talks about her father's passing and kind of the pain that she felt from her abuse, but also the fact that she never got in contact with him and how that was a really complicated feeling from dealing with his abuse, not having regained that contact, and how she was feeling conflicted but also kind of regretting that she didn't make that connection with him again, and she was apologizing to her dad for all of that. I think this song is really, really powerful. I think that a lot of the survivors that we work with can connect to that feeling, these mixed, complicated feelings when it comes to abusers or people in our family, especially after loss, and that feeling of, should I have that connection after I lose them, kind of these mixed feelings of how should I feel when I lose this person. And I think that Christina, although it's a really hard song to listen to, I think that she really describes her feelings beautifully, and I get emotional thinking about it. But I think it's a really, really good song. I do kind of have to give almost like a trigger warning, because this is a song that, although I do think it's beautiful, I think it can be really hard to listen to.
I can vividly remember this being played on like MTV's TRL, which for like younger people who might be viewing this have no idea what that is. But I can like vividly see it in my brain. It is such a good song, but definitely a really hard one to listen to. So with that being said, my song that I chose for grief is called Paper Thin Hymn by Amberlynn. And basically the song is talking very much about that, feeling grief about this loss, and they kind of go through these things that were very important to them. So, you know, they say like, who's going to call on Sunday mornings, who's going to drive you home, like all just kind of reflecting on the things that they used to do for or with this person and how those won't happen anymore. At one point, one of the endings of the verses says something like, you know, make sure to always kiss the people that you love goodbye, because you never really know when it's going to be the last time. So a fun fact about this song, on a lighter note, is one of the last lyrics in the chorus says, complaints of violins become my only friend. And for years and years I've been listening to this song and I'm like, what a weird lyric, like what does that even mean? So a complaint is a group of violins playing. That's a fun, did you know that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I didn't know that. I feel better. Like, people don't know that. So like a complaint of violins is like multiple, like a group of violins playing, which is something obviously that's associated with kind of like, not the funerals per se, but like
sad.
Yeah, like sadness. Yeah. I mean, yes. So a fun fact about that song, but I think it's very relevant just to like feeling the loss of somebody or the pain of losing someone, and just reflecting on kind of like the space in your life that was filled by them and the void that now exists that they're gone. So it's a really good song. Slight trigger warning probably for that too, just because it is very sad. It can be very hard to listen to, especially if it closely connects to like someone in your life that you might have lost. So with that being said, we're moving on to our next one, and I'm gonna give just like a huge trigger warning for this one. Since it is a sexual assault specific song that we picked out, both of these songs are very specific to that topic. So for anyone who might be a survivor of sexual violence or feel triggered by that content, just approach with that kind of in mind before looking into or listening to any of these songs or checking them out.
So in the past, when we have done our music minis, we often had given our songs kind of as recommendations as we're talking about different emotions, to say that we really liked these songs. But particular to our sexual violence or sexual assault specific songs that we are about to name, we are not necessarily giving these as recommendations. We are just mentioning that these are songs that helped us to understand sexual violence a little bit better. And when we mention trigger warnings, we want to make sure that if these are songs that you decide to go out and seek on your own, to make sure that you are practicing self-care and reach out to supports if needed. So with this in mind, the sexual assault specific song that I chose for this week was Warrior by Demi Lovato. So Demi Lovato has come out on previous or several occasions and identified herself as a survivor of sexual assault. Warrior, I believe, was one of the first songs that she wrote that was a little bit more specific regarding her sexual assault, but I could be wrong. And she has an entire album dedicated to, well, not dedicated, but titled Warrior, and I think those songs were a little bit more processing on that album. I know that she had went to treatment and she had a lot of it more kind of like personal songs, but Warrior is really discussing her experience as a survivor and how she feels that she is now a warrior. She describes feeling like this person can no longer hurt her, that she is growing from the experience and she's moving on and she feels strong now. I think that it's a very empowering song because she's saying that I'm not going to be a victim of this experience. I'm a survivor and I'm a warrior, and that you're not going to hurt me, that I'm like moving on. I'm like processing this, and I think that that's really, really powerful.
So my song's a little bit from a different perspective. So my song that I chose was Christy, Are You Doing Okay by The Offspring. It's a little bit of an older song, but I actually listened to the song for a long time and again never really like knew the meaning of it per se, which is kind of strange because if you look at the lyrics it's very apparent what it's about. But it's actually from the perspective of somebody who cared about someone who experienced a sexual assault or some form of sexual violence, and they're reflecting on it. So it's something that would have happened in like their younger years, whether that be like childhood or teenage years, I don't really specify, but they talk about kind of watching that person go through these things and seeing the way that this person was impacted, but being so young at the time that they really couldn't understand or connect what had actually happened. So the song is actually kind of saying like, I'm sorry that I didn't do more for you, and I'm sorry that you didn't help, like I didn't help you because I didn't know what was going on, I didn't understand what was going on, but I hope that you're doing okay now. And it's kind of this like ode to that person where they're talking about their hopes for them, you know, like I hope that you've been able to work through these things, I hope that you've processed that, I hope you haven't spent your life trying to get back what was taken away from you, which is very literally one of the lyrics, which is why I'm saying it that way. But it's a really, really good song. Again, potentially could be very triggering, but I think if you are somebody who knows somebody impacted by sexual violence, it's a song that I think is really something people could connect to in that way of like, you know, maybe I know someone who later in life disclosed something to me, and in reflecting on that I can see how those impacts would have been correlated to that or connected to that, but I really didn't know, I didn't understand what was going on, and maybe didn't have that knowledge, and I'm sorry that I didn't help you out. So it's a really, really beautiful song, but obviously because of the nature of what it's about can be very triggering. So with that being said, that was the conclusion of our grief, sadness, anger, sexual assault specific music mini, which was a lot crammed into one, and again would wrap up the series for our music minis.
Yeah, and thank you all so much for tuning into our music minis. I think that this was something that Chris and I are super passionate about because we both love music so much. It was so exciting to have you guys tune in with us as we talked about music and the way that music can influence our emotions, our processing, our healing, and that music overall can be so healing and impactful to everything. Obviously, there is an entire category of therapy around music, so it's really amazing that we had the opportunity to talk just a tiny bit with all of you about music and the way that we kind of see music in association with different topics. So thank you so much this week for tuning in with us, even though we were talking about a little bit of harder topics. So we thought that these were really important, and we also understand that oftentimes, especially when it comes to things like grief and anger, it's really important that we're able to connect music with these experiences. As always, we want to hear from you in the comments below, so if you have songs that you particularly connect to, we'd love to hear about it. And I kind of wanted to go back to what we talked about before. If you're feeling triggered at all from the music that we talked about or from your own experiences with music, it's really important to reach out to your supports, to use your self-care and your coping skills, and know that our hotline is always open. It's 24 hours, 7 days 24 hours, 7 days a week. I thought I got it backwards there. But
24 days,
24 days, 7 hours a week. Nope, it's 24 hours. So please feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, thank you for tuning in this week.
Bye.
Bye.